our next session, Animating a Greener World, Strategies for Sustainable VFX and Animation, I would like to thank our program partner, Rolling Green, Tourne, Vert, and introduce you to our moderator, Coline Moscardo. Moscardo, coordinator, Rolling Green, Quebec Film and Television Council, and our guest speakers, Adrien Roche, International Project Manager, Ecoprod, Marine Kockmann, Project Manager, Rolling Green, Quebec Film and Television Council, Cecilia Bossel, Deputy Managing Director, Cyber Group Studios, Coline Faure, Operation Manager, Mikros Animation Studio, and Nicolas Delval, Head of Studio, Technicolor Montreal, Mikros Animation, Technicolor Montreal. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here.
Okay, so welcome again, everybody, to today's session. I'm honored to moderate this important discussion on how we can bring sustainability into visual effects and animation. I'll start by giving you just a quick overview of what's on the table for today's presentation. That's our panelist for today. So first, Adrien will share Ecoprod's work in promoting sustainable practices in animation, including their tools and the international carbon calculator as well. We are very, very glad to have Adrien with us today, as it requires him to do a late shift from France. Next, Marine will provide insights on how Rolling Green is supporting Quebec's audiovisual industry in its ecological transition and the concrete tools we offer to help studios become more sustainable. Then Cecilia will discuss Cyber Group carbon footprint calculation experience and their strategy to reduce their impact. And eventually, Nicolas and Coline will speak about Mikros' efforts to integrate eco-friendly initiatives and fostering sustainable practices through their My Mikros Green program. And they will also share with us their challenges. So without further ado, let's jump into the presentation with Adrien, who's going to present Ecoprod and the tool and resources they've developed for VFX and animation.
Thank you, Coline, for the introduction. So I will present Ecoprod very quickly. Ecoprod is a French association created in 2009 by stakeholders of the film and TV industry. Our goal is to promote sustainable film production in live, so in TV, fiction, and also animation. This is a non-profit organization. Our mission is to foster collaboration among stakeholders of the industry to provide tools for professionals. So you can move to the next slide. So we have several tools. We have a carbon calculator, which is an international free carbon calculator that was developed by and for professionals of the film and TV industry. We also provide training courses. Maybe you attended the panel before with Eurimage, so we currently develop a project with Eurimage in order to provide online sustainable training. We also do studies each year on the environmental impact of the film and TV industry, on set design, on the on several aspects of the film production. We also have guides to help professionals in their everyday practices, and we have a certification for film productions. And we also have a network, so in France, but also across the world, in order to exchange, to collaborate, and to communicate on sustainable filming. So very quickly, we have many international projects at Ecoprod. So I mentioned before the development of an e-learning platform. Our idea is to collaborate with as many countries as possible in order to create inclusive and affordable online courses to foster the knowledge of green production among people working in the industry. Our goal is to provide a green animation module in 2026. So for the moment, we are really focused on live film production. Then we also work on several tools. So I will present it later, but we are currently working on an international green animation guide with also many partners across the world. Recently, we launched the first edition of the Festival Ecoprod Afrique, which is a green production festival in Togo. So in order to create discussions around this topic in French-speaking countries in Africa. And we also work on the development of several tools, among which our free carbon calculator and label. So the international guide for green animation I mentioned before was first a French guide for green animation. It was a pioneering resource on sustainable animation, as many players have been mobilized to produce this guide for green animation. This project was led by associations and also studios in France. This is a very exhaustive guide. So yes, we can move to the next slide. We have many advices for professionals. There are 60 sheets and 150 concrete actions organized around 7 global teams in order to provide as much detail as possible for professionals. There are detailed advices for studios directors, IT managers, writers, producers, technicians. So this is a huge source of information, and it was a free and collaborative project. The guide is always available for free on our website for the people who speak French. But yes, you can go to the next slide. So yes, here's the detail of the different themes. We have a focus on pipelines and related infrastructures. We have a focus on communications, for example, merchandising in the field of animation, which is, as you know, can be very polluting, but also a huge source of revenue for the studios. But we also have more general focus, for example, on buildings and offices, on catering, on transports, and also on content, which is a little bit different because it's not really the focus on production, but this is a very important part of the process of the movie. And if we want to change the practices, we also have to work on the content. So you have a RQ code here if you want to have access to the French guide. But so when we worked on this guide, we wanted to provide it in English, but we realized it was very French focused. It was developed by French professionals for French professionals, and it couldn't just be translated. So we started to create a group. You can move to the next slide. So this group is composed of several film funds and also of Green Film, which is a major stakeholder in Europe in the sustainable film production area. And so with all these partners, we work on the creation of an international guide. The aim is to collect feedback from professionals and to finance an international green animation group. So our goal right now is not just the guide, but it's also to harmonize practices. So this is a huge project because we don't want to do the same mistakes as there was before in live. So we have many different tools which don't have the same criteria. And when we work on international co-production, this is a very big problem. And animation is works on a lot of international co-production. So we really need to work together in different countries on the same tools, on the same criteria. So right now we have the chance to work at a very early stage on this project. We have many steps coming, but the first step will be the development of this international guide. And a very quick focus on the current situation in France. So as you may know, the CNC launched this year the action plan for live production. So 2 carbon assessments are mandatory for the live industry, but this eco-conditionality will be applied to animation by March 2025. So this is this concerns just carbon assessment, and this is just for the project concerned by the CNC project supported by the CNC. So to do so, we have developed in France a French tool for carbon calculation dedicated to animation. So this is the Carbulator, and a new version of this tool will be released very soon. This is not yet an international tool. Unfortunately, we have very French specific data, but we really look forward to the development of this tool. So yes, this is it for the quick introduction. I will let Caroline present the rest of the presentation. So if you have any question regarding our projects, feel free to contact us. And also, I'm really happy to answer your questions after we do the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrien, and congratulations for all your inspiring projects. We'll now move on to Marine from Rolling Green, who will discuss the sustainable approach in Quebec's audiovisual industry and present the tools and resources for the studio as well.
Thank you. So hi everyone. So I'm gonna present you the Rolling Green program, which is the eco-responsible program for the audiovisual industry in Quebec. You can, thanks. So Rolling Green, Tourne Vert in French, was created almost 4 years ago by 3 entities, which are the Quebec Film and Television Council, Québécois, and the Quebec Council of Eco-Responsible Events. And the idea with this program was to help all the stakeholders to implement more sustainable and greener actions, and to help them and to help the industry to accelerate its ecological transitions. So our main goals are to reduce the ecological footprint of our industry. We want also to recognize and promote the eco-responsible production and the efforts made by the team. We try to provide resources, data, tools. We do also some trainings, and we collaborate with a lot of stakeholders in this industry, such as broadcaster, producers, associations, unions, universities, etc. Also program as Ecoprod in France. And we do that in order to identify issues and try to find together solutions to, again, accelerate the ecological transition that we have to make. Thanks. So very briefly, I want to tell you a little bit more about our tools, but those are mainly for the live action area. So I'm going to be very quick. So we have a good practices guide, and we have also an accreditation program. So this is very unique in Canada. We are the only one to have such a program. And so the goal through this accreditation is to promote eco production and encourage others to be greener. So currently there are already some 125 accredited productions and or in the process of being accredited. On our website, you can find also a source book of providers. So inside the source book, you can find any kind of suppliers with ethical policy. Like I said, we do also some trainings, studies, webinar, obviously. So don't hesitate to check out our website. Everything is translated as well in English than in French. You can, thanks. So now let's have a look at what we have for the animation and visual effects studios. So this year we have extended our program to include visual effects and animation studios. So we developed a best practices guide, and we did it in collaboration with 2 digital experts in the sustainable field. So this guide is intended as a reference for managers and other employees to help them initiate or pursue a sustainable development approach. So it's divided into several sections, starting with how to mobilize your team. So in this section, we focus on how it's important of sharing information with all your team on sustainability efforts. and how it's essential to have someone in charge of environmental and social initiatives, keep everyone in the loop and make sure that all the team is on board and have a good understanding of what of the process and why you're doing this. And then we have a section on infrastructure and energy. So here there are some recommendations for reducing the energy consumption and for optimizing the building for better energy performance. So for example, it could be very beneficial to request an audit to evaluate the energy efficiency of your facility. In the next section, we focus on digital sobriety. So here there are some advice on data management strategies, best practices for using and maintaining electronic devices, and how to handle their end of life. And so the first section provides best practices for a more sustainable approach to creation and production. So this part is mainly intended for artists. And so finally, at the end of the guide, we added a lot of resources, complementary readings, articles. So if you want to explore further, it can be very helpful. So this guide is available on our website in English and in French. So don't hesitate to check out. You can, yeah, perfect. So in addition to this best practices guide, we launched an accreditation for the studios. But so this time we accredit the studio, the entire studio, like an infrastructure and not an individual production. So this is the main difference between this accreditation and the other one. And also that's why it's valid for 2 years. And then the studio will have to do a new evaluation. And we are very excited to have 4 studios in the process of being accredited. And of course, Mikros is one of them. So they are going to explain you what they are implemented in a minute. You can move to the next one. Thank you. But first, I just want to tell you a little bit more about the process of the accreditation and how it works. So as you can see, there are 3 levels. So the first one is commitment. The studio needs to implement a minimum of 10 eco-responsible actions. And then so it's pretty simple. It's a form to complete, and you have to give explanation and describe your actions. And it costs $150. And then we have the performance level. So this time it's a little bit different. It's an Excel tab to complete. And the studio needs to obtain at least 35 points. And so every actions that you implement give some points. So it's always between 1 and 3. And the fees are $300. And finally, the excellence level. So obviously this one is the hardest to get because this time the studio needs to reach 70 points. But otherwise, it's the same process and it's the same price. And thanks. And here you have a screenshot of the Excel tab of the accreditation. So as you can see, it's pretty easy. So on the left, you have a column with a list of action. So you just have to say if the action is implemented or not. And you have the score corresponding. And it's very important to insert links, to insert evidence and proof, because when we are doing the evaluation, it's like this that we can make sure that what you're saying is correct. So don't forget to give proofs and explanations. And so yeah, and that after that, sorry, after that, Secure tally up the score, and we give you your level. So yeah, I think that's it. You can move on. Thanks. So yeah, this is it for the Rolling Green presentation. If you have any question, feel free to reach out. You have our information. Caroline works also with me on this program. And then you have also our website. Again, all our tools are available in English as well as in French. So don't hesitate to check it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Marine. We worked a lot on these new tools and accreditation for the studios. This is still very recent, but we'll be happy to answer your question about that at the end of the presentation if you want to learn more. So next we have Cecilia Bossel from Cyber Group, who will share Cyber Group's carbon footprint calculation and the lessons they'll learn from that.
Hello, everybody, talking from Paris as well. So Cyber Group Studios, next slide, please. In a nutshell, we're an independent producer and distributor of animated TV series located in France, but with a very strong, not carbon, but international footprint in, as you see, United States, North America, France, England, Italy, Singapore. So we are a little bit everywhere. And I think what Adrien said, the importance of having an international calculator would be extremely useful for us, as you can imagine. So when we came back from the COVID, we needed a project to find a cohesion between people. Next step. And so we calculated our carbon footprint. We have an overall carbon footprint. This was done in 2023 on the 2022 information. So we have 183 tons CO2 and 2.4 per employee. As you see, the most important item is purchase and services. I think Adrien pointed out how important it is when we go to the MIPCOM or to the Cartoon Forum. We obviously have a lot of print. We have a lot of exhibition material. So we didn't think that was so important, but it actually has a lot of impact. Now, I didn't pick up everything. Obviously, you can see some things look a bit strange because of the French presentation. I changed it to English. What is interesting is to see that 14% of our footprint comes from a basic meal. And it was very interesting to share this information with our staff. They did not consider that it was so important. But you can see that the impact of having 50% of meat consumption is not 50, but it's half of the time there's 60% of impact. And so obviously the impact of meat consumption is stronger than we think. However, all in all, being very French, our footprint for Cyber Group Studios is beneath the average footprint in France. So that's interesting information. Another very interesting information is that we have two sites in France, one in Paris and one in close to Lille, Roubaix. So one in province and one in the big city. Obviously, our impact is much slower actually it doesn't come up here, but it's much less in Paris because people take the metro, the bus, or have an electric bike or walk. Whereas in the graphic underneath, we obviously see people traveling by car in northern France. Next. And the professional business travel, you can see that even though only 30% of our travel is done by plane, it has a 93% impact on our footprint. So this kind of information shared with people, they understand that, oh, there are things that we can actually work on. I think there's one more slide on finding. Yeah, this is so what did we concretely do? Well, we replaced magazine advertising with digital. We increased our optical fiber between studios to enhance sharing of data. And we are also working on a file management system which enables us to reduce file duplication. I think people who are working in animation can understand how we are so scared of deleting any information. So what we do is keep everything, which obviously is not a good thing. And our storage is just exploding. So this is one of our first factors which we're working on. We have set in a plane policy, no more trains if it's less than 2 hours travel. In France, in Europe, we have a very good train system, so no more planes if that's been taken care of. We monitor travel with a carbon footprint with a system we use for traveling called Navan. And in France, you can give subsidy for 50% of your travel tickets, and we take it up to 75%. So if you pay 100 euros per month, well, you actually only pocket out 25 euros. It's an incentive for people to use the public transport. We also allow 2 weeks working from home. We have electric car chargers in the parking, and so we have bike racks. Also, we put posters up. These are in French, obviously. So in January, we say all the fruit and vegetables which are of the month. We show that one lunch with beef is equal to 5 with chicken, or many more in salad. And we also have put these are very small things we have done. We give out Tupperware, so people, when they go out to the restaurants, they have the Tupperware filled instead of having packaging. Voila, next step. Obviously, the big thing is using real-time production to increase production time and therefore also energy. I think the next slide will give you a better idea. So traditionally we take about 50 days for 1 minute of animation, and we can gain about 15 days by using real time and AI. So obviously this is still to be improved, and we are definitely going into this field because we believe that this is the way we can improve storytelling and reduce cost. Yeah, so we are very keen on using the carburetor created by Ecoprod, and even more so because we will be obliged to do so for all productions which we want to have subsidies from the CNC. However, as you saw on one of the first slides, we have co-productions and we have service providers a little bit everywhere in the world. So having a unique tool would be just wonderful, because you have things in Australia, you have things in England, you have different calculators all over the world, and we would love to have a calculator which is being used by all our partners. Thank you. I think that's it. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Cecilia, for sharing all that information and your studio's experience. We also hope to have to see like a universal carbon calculator soon. But yeah, we'll now pass it over to our last speakers. So Nicolas and Coline from Mikros Animation.
Hello, hi everybody. Hope everybody is hearing me well. Thank you, Cecilia, first, because it was very, very interesting to know that. And to be frank, I guess it's also the type of exercise that we are doing at the moment. It's just that it makes us think about improvement that we're going to have to do in our own policy as well, and analysis that we have to proceed in order to make it as appropriate as possible. So also thank you to the QFTC and giving us the opportunity to give us the opportunity to share about our experience. To be perfectly frank with you, we were a bit surprised at first, and because we are not yet certified, we are in the process of certification, but we agreed that it could be great to speak about the current process, the achievement that we did so far, and maybe most the problematic that we are facing in regard to the certification. That's why that on top of the challenges that that going to be presented by Coline as well, we thought it was interesting to understand a bit more about who we were first, so you understand the type of community and the type of industry that with whom we are working. So just I'm going to be very quick about that. Who we are at Mikros. So initially we are a French studio established 40 years ago in Paris. We started in the visual effects industry, working on commercials, institutional movies, on the feature side as well, and the post-production. And it's only at the beginning of, I would say 20 years ago, at the beginning of the year 2000s, that we started our first incursions into the world of animation. And so like everybody, with the production of a couple of short movies. And after getting some credentials into that, we launched our animation division in 2012 with a very famous and very well-identified IP, especially in Europe, called Asterix. And we have been involved into the first CGI Asterix called Asterix and the Dimensions of the Gods. Roughly 2012, it also matches with our international expansions. So we set up our Montreal studio in 2011, and at the same time, we maintain a global presence in Montreal, though, but also in Paris, and in India and Bangalore for everything that deals with our production offices. Also, so for the past 12 years, we have been involved onto 16 feature films. The few references that you have on screen are actually the ones that have been produced within our Montreal studio. And at the moment, we are lucky enough to have 2 shows in productions. By lucky, I mean lucky knowing that our industry is facing some challenges in regards to the contraction of the industry at the moment. That being said, in order to give you some context, each of these projects we are working on each of these projects with independent producers, with some majors. Some of them, I mean, the first major who trusted Mikros was actually DreamWorks for the needs of Captain Underpants. And then we have developed a trustful collaboration and partnership with Paramount Animation, and also with Spin Master for very well-known franchise such as SpongeBob, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and also recently as well, the Paw Patrol movies and sequels. To give you some context, each show, it's approximately 2 years of production. It involves, as an average, it depends also on the budget and on the challenges of each show, but we could say that it's approximately 300 employees. Usually, we are trying to develop our pipeline for each of these shows, including cutting-edge technology, including as well, as mentioned as well by Cecilia, a large portion of technology such as the storage, the rendering needs on premises, but also in clouds, And you can imagine that it is also one of the challenges that we have to face, because that goes against the sobriety that we are trying to work on within the studio. When I was speaking about the people, and before leaving the Coline taking over, what I wanted to mention is that our studio over the years ranges between 165 and 600, 700 employees. Today, or we can anticipate that within 6 months, we're going to be close to 400 here in Montreal. A large proportion, so you know the people, the large proportion of our employees are French-speaking people, Canadian, I mean native Canadian people, but also French-speaking people coming from Europe. But not only, we have up to 30 different nationalities at Mikros. The average age is pretty young, since we speak about 29 to 30-year-old people in our industry. So, I mean, Coline and myself are among the grandpas and grandmas of our industry. But what I mean is that we are working with a young community is very well concerned by the environment and environment matters. It has always been in our intention actually to have a studio shaped by the employees, and going to even go beyond that, belonging to the employees, even closer to their expectations in many aspects of the life of the studio, but also beyond the professional context. And that's the reason why we launched a series of initiatives that are going to be exposed by Coline.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Nicolas. So yes, I'm Coline. I'm the operations manager here at Mikros Montreal. I'm here today just to present you what we've done in Mikros regarding green initiatives. Just to give you a brief overview of that, it started in 2018 with the creation of our My Mikros, our social committee. At the beginning, this social committee was a group of employees, people from production, from human resources, technology, but also artists themselves. And they wanted to create a committee just to raise their voice to the upper management. The idea was to work on various improvements that could be made to the studio, such as, I don't know, more ergonomic and pleasant workspaces with new chairs, screen risers, light therapy lamp during winters, but also artistic masterclasses and live drawing sessions. And then with the expansion of the studio and the arrival of new projects and new employees, we had new members, and in these new members, some of them had a strong ecological and eco-citizen consciousness. And they have decided to bring this new dimension to My Mikros by creating My Mikros Green. And it was about a year after the creation of My Mikros. Their aim was to initiate very simple things to make people aware of climate change, but also raise their awareness and gradually change the way they do things. I wrote on the slide a few examples of green initiatives that we've worked on and implemented within the company here in Montreal. For example, composting, we did a seedlings swap. We had a campaign for turn off our screens. We allowed people to participate in the big climate march in 2019 during their working hours. Also, before the pandemic, and when we don't have this sensibility about the business travel, we try to offset greenhouse gas emissions by donating money to the Carbon Boreal organization. So yeah, I don't pass through all the different examples, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the different things that we've have done and also explain how we came to want to join the Rolling Green program, which we think is a great opportunity to take our approach a step further. Next slide, please, Caroline. Thank you. So at the moment, we are at the very beginning of the accreditation, as Nicolas mentioned it. We saw a little bit earlier that the program includes 3 levels with 6 categories. So mobility, on-screen and broadcast, social and economic impact, education and awareness, digital sobriety, and facilities. The facilities and the digital sobriety are the most important ones, with a number of actions that are more important. At the moment, when we go through the document that Marine shared at the beginning of the presentation, we have a total of 70 points. So it means that the level 3 seems to be accessible. But our aim is to solidify first the level 2 by going beyond the basic points, and then move on the next level, the excellence 1. But anyway, since we don't have the certification first, we need first to document all our answers and get it. And this is my job for the next weeks. At the moment, I would say that we are in the middle of the process. It means that I would say 50% of the actions are completed. For the 50% others, actually, we will have to work on the digital sobriety and on the facilities. But for that, we'll have to work on actually, we'll have to make sure that we can involve the Technicolor group and also our landlord, because we won't be able to do that from our own. Maybe next slide. Just to give you some idea about things we could implement and work on. So there are very simple things such as encourage carpooling, or organize training discussion with our teams about the digital sobriety or the eco-friendly studio project. But we have also other action that will require more time, maybe also a little bit of more money, and it will be part of our challenges. So Nicolas, I don't know if you would like to take over about the next slide regarding the challenges and the objectives we would like to meet.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's possible to go to the next slide, yeah. Yeah, but regarding the objectives, Colin's already gives us an overview of what we are trying to solidify and what we are trying to aiming within the next year. Also, I mean, without getting into the details of each challenge, and I see also the clock ticking, so I'm going to try to wrap. I started by saying that sometimes, I mean, given the nature of our industry, which is about promoting the technology in many aspects of our activity, and also in order to meet the requirements of a client, it goes against the sobriety we try also to encourage internally. We know, for example, there is something that might have a great impact, which is about the education of our talents themselves in regarding to the way they're going to produce the images. Let me give you just a short example. A few years ago, it was very common in the industry to brag about the ton of hours that has been consumed in a render farm. Sometimes we spoke about hundreds of thousands of, dozens of thousands of hours in order to produce one pretty basic image. But we need to be back to as well to the nature of our work. Visual effects, animation, visual effects, it's trying to find workaround in order to reproduce sometimes the reality. And instead of making workarounds, the imitation of the nature sometimes make us actually even burning more resources than shooting it directly, in a sense. What I mean here is that among our community, among the young artists, we need to make sure that they understand that we give them some tools that are actually that needs a lot of energy, need a lot of resources, and they need to be used with caution. And one last thing, among the challenges, you mentioned, Coline, the fact that being part of corporation, it does mean that sometimes the bigger the elephant is, the smaller, the slower it's going to be in order to create the change. And this is here where we need to be, we are trying to be as creative as possible in order to be an example, to go with kind of empiric method. We're trying to make an example and in trying to reproduce it within the group. And, you know, change in every organization can be long, and this is what we are trying to we try to change. But once again, it's not an isolated case, but it is what we are facing, what everybody in a huge corporation could face.
I'm sorry to rush the discussion, but it's going to be time for question. I don't know, do you have still... Yeah, that's the question time. Are you done, Coline and Nicolas? Can we move on to the question, or do you have more things to share with us?
No, we're good.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing all that. So we'll now move on to the questions. First question, I think that's for everyone. As animation requires rendering time and therefore then requires a lot of electricity, are there any measures or new technology being implemented to reduce emission and energy use?
I don't know if somebody wants to speak about that one. Otherwise, I'm happy to start the ball.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's first thing, once again, is that you're absolutely right. It's one of our biggest problematic, trying to reduce the consumption of rendering storage in premises, but also in the cloud. In premises, we tried to find a few things. Among the initiatives that we did in the studio here, for example, is that we have some renders and servers that produce heat within the building. And with the agreement, I mean, we find an agreement with our landlord, and thanks to that, we are keeping part of the heat that is being produced at the ground floor in order to heat not the entire building, we'd love that, but at least the parking, which is underneath. So in a way, and especially in our very cold winter, it's it's an opportunity to save significant energy, to heating energy on a daily basis. But once again, what we'd love to do on the long run is keep maybe we could think about heating the entire building with our consumption. And more globally, once again, I think one of the things is that we need to reduce it. Still starts with the sobriety, and we need to think more clever way to produce the images that we're currently producing.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. I don't know if any of the other panelists wants to add something to that. Otherwise, we can pass to the next question. So have any of your companies incorporated the emission from financial institution, banks, that provide financing for production, and invest heavily in fossil fuel projects into concrete action plan to reduce animation financial emission footprint? That's a long question.
So basically, are we helped?
Sorry?
So basically, are we helped by
I guess
banks?
that's the question.
In France, I mean, I think every country is different. In France, if you don't have a law, people don't stick to anything. So the French government has decided, the CNC, so the board, the film board, if you like, French film board, has requested that every series will have an estimated footprint, which is very good because it will force everybody. And as Nicolas says, it's not the first thing we're worried about. The first thing we're worried about is having productions to feed our studios, and carbon footprint sort of comes later in the priorities. The fact that this will now be requested is very good. So indirectly, they're like a bank because they help us finance our productions. So yeah, it sometimes has to come from top down. It's now coming from bottom up, and which is difficult sometimes to be accepted by management in general because it's not the priority. The fact that it's coming from top down is actually very good. Sounds silly, but that's the way it is.
I'm just thinking, but I think it's, yeah, the person was asking if you incorporated the emission from the financial institution, because usually financial institutions invest into fossil fuel projects. Did you count that into your carbon calculation? Did you take it into account? I think that was the question, sorry.
Okay,
that was
not yet, but it will be, yes. And that's why it's important that everybody does it, because you ask person before you, how much did you do, and person who's next to you. So we have the broadcasters which are going to broadcast, so and then they're going to be on TVs, which are going to be also have a footprint. And then before us, we have talent, or we have computers, we have banks as well. So yes, everybody has a part to play. We've only stuck to our scope 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, thank you, Cecilia. And maybe one last question. Since I am a student, we have limited resources. Are there any recommendation on how to use VFX and animation throughout the production?
You see me smiling, but to be frank, I think all the fact to have these constraints, being a student, doesn't necessarily is a problem with your creativity, and actually it's quite the opposite. And I'm usually all the students, all the schools give a limited resources to their students, and this is usually where we see the most creativity in our industry. So honestly, I think that it is still something on which us, the studio, we need to get inspired as well.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to all our panelists today. Thank you for being here with us. And I don't know, Melanie, if you want to say one last word to close the meeting.
I just wanted to say thank you very much. And it is so interesting for us to learn more about what we can do in visual effects and animation. I really haven't heard the term digital sobriety very much. And yeah, reducing our consumption is a big part of it. We can't only techify our way out of emissions, and actually solutions are going to come from everywhere. So I appreciate that. And thank you so much for your time.